Welcome to Sleepy Cosmic. As your day begins to soften at the edges and your mind seeks a place of rest, let me take you by the hand and guide you into a story that feels both familiar and endlessly mysterious. Tonight we begin not with questions, but with light. You wake beneath a sky you've known your whole life, yet something about it hums differently. The air itself seems to shimmer like a secret you can almost hear but not quite understand. The dawn feels too bright, as if someone turned the sky's dial a little too far. You blink once, twice, and realize the sun, your ancient companion, is no longer the same. It hangs lower, smaller, and yet burns with a purer white than you've ever seen. The light doesn't just touch the ground it spills, it sings, it clings to every surface with a crystalline precision. Shadows sharpen. Dewdrops on the grass glow like tiny mirrors, throwing shards of brilliance into the morning air. There's a silence that feels almost alive, a kind of stillness that only appears when something vast has changed. You breathe it in and notice how the world smells faintly different, as though the sun's fire has been polished. You raise a hand toward the light, and it floods through your fingers, softer than warmth, sharper than comfort. The sky glows like frosted glass, the blue thinner, stretched to transparency. You can't tell if it's morning or a dream of morning. The birds are quiet for a beat longer than usual, uncertain whether this new brilliance means it's time to sing or hide. Somewhere, a breeze stirs the leaves, but even that seems to hesitate. Unsure how to move in this newly brightened world, you whisper to yourself, the sun looks smaller, and it does, not shrunken by distance or cloud, but by essence, as if it has drawn inward, condensed into something denser, more perfect. A pearl of energy suspended in the vast dark beyond, now shining with a sharpness that pierces through even the softest thoughts. There's beauty in it, undeniable beauty, but also unease, the kind of quiet dissonance you feel when something sacred has shifted, just enough to make you question what's real. The world beneath your feet remains the same, yet every familiar thing wears a new color. The soil gleams pale gold instead of brown. The river's surface burns like a strip of liquid glass. Mountains at the horizon glint as though dusted with invisible fire. It's as if Earth itself has been repainted by a hand that prefers contrast over comfort. You stand in it, trying to decide whether this brightness feels like a gift or a warning. You remember the warmth of old mornings, how sunlight once carried a golden hush that eased you into wakefulness. But this new light arrives like a revelation. It does not ease. It demands, it calls every atom of you to attention. You close your eyes and still see it burned against your eyelids, a white phantom pulsing with impossible energy. It's not harsh, exactly, just impossibly pure, like the sound of a single note sustained too long. And as you breathe beneath that smaller, brighter sun, a strange thought comes. Maybe the universe is trying to tell you something. Maybe this change isn't punishment or accident, it's invitation to look again, to see the familiar not as routine but as miracle. Because isn't that what light does? It reveals what was always there but unseen. You begin to walk slowly, barefoot, across the quiet earth. The grass feels cool, even under such a brilliant sky. Every step makes a whispering sound, as if the world is speaking back to you. You notice the shadows, so defined, so exact that they look etched into the ground. You stretch your arm out and see your shadow move in perfect precision. Every finger, every strand of hair marked clearly in the brightness. It's as though light has found its voice, and it's spelling your name. Why does it feel smaller? You ask no one. Maybe the stars are listening. Maybe they always have been. Somewhere deep inside, you imagine the sun folding inward, shrinking in body but growing in intensity, like a thought focused to brilliance, or a heart contracting before it releases new life. The scientists might one day find equations for this, but tonight it's not about numbers. It's about the sensation of standing in a world slightly off tune, where the melody has shifted just enough to wake something ancient within you. And oh, how the colors respond. Leaves gleam silver green, oceans reflect almost white. Even your own skin seems to shimmer, as though painted with faint starlight. The sunlight wraps around you, weightless but overwhelming, like being touched by clarity itself. For a moment, you feel both small and infinite-like. The light is showing you what it's like to be seen by the universe. Completely, a curious calm fills you. There's no fear here, only wonder. You feel as though you've stepped into the first morning of a brand new earth, one crafted from the same dream as the old, but lit by a different hope. The smaller sun stares down not as ruler, but as companion and ancient friend wearing a new face. You wonder how many suns have burned and dimmed, brightened and changed across the galaxies unseen. How many worlds woke to a dawn they didn't recognize, and how many hearts trembled with the same mix of awe and belonging that you feel now. The breeze returns, gentle, curious. It carries warmth not from the ground, but from the air itself, charged by the sun's concentrated power. You sense that even the molecules are dancing differently, moving faster, alive with this new rhythm of light. And yet the world feels quieter, more sacred, as if creation has paused to take a breath. You tilt your head and think of time, how it has always been measured by the sun's steady march, how centuries of life have trusted its size, its warmth, its predictable heart. But what happens to time when the thing that defines it changes? Does it stretch? Does it bend? Or does it simply shimmer like a mirage, waiting for you to decide what it means? You don't know. But somehow that not knowing feels right. The mystery feels gentle, like an unanswered question whispered before sleep. The birds finally sing. Their songs sound brighter, too, as if tuned to this new kind of dawn. The wind hums softly in the trees, weaving with their music. The world continues, adapting, learning, shimmering. You realize that even though the sun is smaller, life has not faltered. It adjusts. It bends with grace, as it always does. You sit beneath a tree whose leaves scatter the sunlight into tiny constellations across your lap. Each fleck of light dances like a miniature star. You reach out, catch one on your palm, and for a heartbeat, you swear it stays there solid, living, burning in silence. Then it fades, leaving only warmth behind. You smile, because somehow you understand nothing truly disappears. It only changes form. You close your eyes and let the light paint your thoughts. You see memories, childhood mornings, soft gold on sleepy eyelids, the hum of the world waking. You see the present, sharp and crystalline. You see futures that glow in quiet unknowns. And through it all, one truth repeats. the universe is alive, endlessly rearranging its own beauty. You open your eyes again, and the world glows as if it knows you've understood. The smaller sun still burns above, bright as a promise, patient as time itself. You whisper, you look different, and in the silence that follows, you almost hear it answer back, not with words, but with light. A language older than sound, older than thought. And in that language, it tells you everything changes. And change, too, is holy. The day stretches on, but it feels timeless. A perfect pause suspended between what was and what will be. You lie back on the grass, the earth cool against your spine, and let the light wash over you. For the first time in forever, you feel no need to name things, no urgency to understand. You're simply here, breathing, shining back at the sun. The smaller, brighter star continues to burn, quietly, steadily, as though it too has found peace in its new form. And as you drift between waking and dream, you realize that perhaps this is what the universe wanted all along, for you to see that even light, in its endless wisdom, can change and still remain itself. If the light feels sharper today, if the warmth against your skin hums with an unfamiliar intensity, there's a reason, and it begins deep within the heart of the sun itself. You see, stars are not just distant balls of fire. They are living systems, balancing forces so perfectly that they might as well breathe. Every star, including ours, holds an invisible conversation between gravity pulling inward and heat pushing outward. It's a cosmic dialogue that keeps them alive, balanced, and shining across billions of years. But imagine this balance: shifting gravity pressing harder, the star folding tighter, its surface drawing inward. The sun becomes smaller, yes, but in doing so, its inner fire concentrates. Pressure rises, atoms collide faster, and fusion, the process that turns hydrogen into light, burns even more fiercely. Like a candle with a smaller wick but a sharper flame, the sun's energy condenses, its brightness flaring beyond what its size should allow. Smaller but brighter, simpler but more intense. It's a paradox that makes sense only when you feel it. When something contracts, its essence refines. You've felt it too yourself. The moments when life pressed you inward, when everything seemed smaller, denser, more confined. Yet somehow, that's when your own light burned fiercest. The sun, too, follows this quiet truth of nature. Compression is not always destruction. Sometimes it's transformation. Deep in the sun's core, hydrogen atoms fuse to become helium. Each reaction releases energy, not just light, but warmth, life, time itself. The more tightly packed the atoms, the more collisions occur. The energy builds, rippling outward until it bursts from the surface as the glow we know so well. If our sun were smaller, its core would be under greater pressure, its temperature soaring to unimaginable levels. The photons, the tiny messengers of light, would escape faster in a torrent of brightness, and so the sun would shine whiter, fiercer, more youthful, as if rediscovering its own beginnings. You could look at it and feel that contradiction, how something diminished in size could seem so overwhelmingly alive. Scientists call this relationship the mass-luminosity law. A star's brightness increases dramatically with even a small rise in its core temperature and mass density. But that law, in the language of feeling, simply says this: the more something holds within itself, the more it has to give. You can almost imagine it, now the smaller sun above you, blazing like a white diamond instead of gold. Its heat, though pure, feels thinner somehow, less like a blanket and more like a whisper that still manages to reach every corner of Earth. Its light travels through the air differently, sharper, cleaner. Even the colors it paints across your world begin to change. Blues deepen, greens shimmer like glass, and shadows move with surgical precision. The sun's smaller body breathes out an energy that feels both ancient and newborn, like a memory trying to become real again. But what does it mean for you, standing beneath it? Perhaps it's a reminder that light and size are not the same thing. That strength doesn't always come from scale. Sometimes it's found in focusing, the ability to condense power, to glow harder, not larger. The sun, in its smaller form, teaches you something quietly profound that even the universe values: quality over quantity. If you could drift close enough to touch it, you'd see layers moving like slow music, the outer shell shimmering white-hot, the inner heart roaring with fusion, the core, a place where matter forgets itself and becomes energy. There's something sacred about that conversion. Hydrogen, simple, invisible, becomes light. It's the universe's purest act of alchemy, repeated endlessly so that every living thing can see, feel, and grow. Could our sun ever truly do this? Could it, one day, shrink and brighten in truth, not just imagination? In some distant timeline, yes. Stars evolve, as all living things do. As they age, they shift their balance, contract, expand, burn brighter, or fade. But tonight, that isn't the question that matters. Tonight, it's enough to wonder how something so familiar could change and still remain itself. You might find yourself thinking of the sun as a mirror. What it does in the heavens, you do in your heart. You burn, you collapse, you shine again. You contain gravity and light in constant conversation. And maybe, just like the sun, you are learning that even when life folds you smaller, you can still glow brighter. The science of stars is the science of persistence. Gravity tries to pull everything inward, but light always finds a way out. In the silence of space, where no wind or wave can carry sound, the sun sings its brightness through photons, along tiny messengers of hope, streaming endlessly across emptiness, carrying warmth to worlds that have never even been seen. And somehow, that feels personal. Because if the sun can do that, if it can shine smaller and still illuminate the dark, then so can you. So you lie there, under this new light, half listening to the hum of the smaller sun, half lost in thought. You don't need to understand every equation, every law of thermodynamics. You only need to feel it, the truth humming quietly through the cosmos. That energy never disappears. It only changes form, deepens, refines, learns to speak in new tones. The sun's smaller body isn't a loss. It's a new song, a sharper, purer note in the long music of creation. And as you close your eyes, the light doesn't fade. It softens. It folds around you, patient and knowing, like the breath of the universe itself. When morning comes now, it doesn't feel like morning. The horizon brightens too quickly, as if someone lifted a veil all at once instead of letting dawn unfold. The sun rises smaller, sharper, and its light pours through the air like liquid glass. You open your eyes, and the world is washed in brilliance. Shadows stretch long and thin, like strands of silk drawn across the ground, and even the softest colors seem to hum with hidden energy. The air glows as though filled with crystal dust. You might think such beauty would comfort you, but it doesn't. Not entirely. There's something alien about it. The warmth that once wrapped gently around your skin now presses differently. It's cleaner, more direct, and somehow colder in its purity. The light no longer diffuses, it cuts. The blues in the sky lean toward white, and clouds no longer drift so much as gleam, each one outlined in silver, so bright it almost hurts to look. The oceans, once the color of memory, now shimmer with metallic fire. Waves scatter sunlight like shards of mirrors, and every reflection doubles the brilliance until the sea itself feels alive, restless, unwilling to stay still. On shore, forests gleam with an otherworldly shimmer. Leaves that once whispered in shades of emerald now flash like glass. The chlorophyll beneath them, struggling to adjust to the relentless flood of photons. Even the wind carries something new, an edge of heat that doesn't comfort. A stillness beneath sound that feels almost too clear. And you, standing there under this sharpened daylight, find yourself squinting even when your eyes are closed. The brightness seeps inward, painting its own afterimage behind your lids, as if reminding you that the sun's new light can reach places ordinary light never touched. There's a strange duality to it, beauty mixed with unease, awe softened by disquiet. You want to love it, this brilliant rebirth of your world, but part of you misses the gentler gold that used to cradle mornings and evenings alike. It's a strange kind of nostalgia, longing for warmth that was once so ordinary you never noticed it disappearing. Life begins to adjust. The rhythm of the earth bends subtly, responding to the change in energy, like a dancer learning a new tempo. Plants start closing their leaves earlier, not from fatigue, but to shield themselves from overexposure. Some species thrive, photosynthesis racing ahead under the flood of light, while others begin to struggle. Shadows grow longer but more distinct, creating sharp contrasts that change how animals hide, hunt, and rest. Even human sleep starts to shift. Nights feel darker by comparison, and the line between waking and dreaming blurs, as if the brain itself is confused by so much clarity during the day. Have you ever noticed how too much light can make it harder to see? When everything shines, nothing stands out. That's what Earth feels like now. The brilliance is breathtaking, yet it steals depth, soft edges, and mystery. It's as if the world has lost its shadows, and with them, part of its soul. But there's another way to look at it. Maybe this is what evolution feels like, uncomfortable brilliance. Maybe we're meant to adapt to beauty that challenges us. Perhaps the smaller, brighter sun is not a punishment, but a reminder that perfection often carries weight. Light that's sharp can reveal everything, the cracks, the imperfections, the truth beneath appearances. You can't hide from it. And in that honesty, perhaps there's a strange kind of peace. The earth's colors change slowly, subtly. Deserts glint like powdered gold. Snowfields gleam blue-white, almost translucent, as if the planet itself has been polished. Rivers catch the light and braid it through valleys like silver threads. Cities glitter more fiercely than ever, their rooftops flaring like small suns beneath the real one. It's dazzling, but also humbling. The line between natural and artificial light begins to blur until the world feels unified under one relentless radiance. Even sound changes. The air's temperature gradient, once soft, becomes more abrupt, bending echoes and refracting them in strange ways. Voices seem sharper, footsteps crisper. The silence between sounds feels longer, deeper, almost sacred. It's as though the planet itself is holding its breath under the new brilliance, waiting to see what will happen next. And you, the traveler, notice how your emotions mirror the light. You feel clearer, more awake, but also fragile. There's no hiding place from illumination this pure. It strips you of pretense and leaves you standing there, exposed but maybe freer. The sun, in its new form, becomes both a teacher and a test. It asks whether you can still find comfort in clarity, or whether you need the soft shadows of yesterday to feel safe. Would this brightness bring life closer to perfection or burn it away? The question lingers like a mirage. You can't quite answer it, and maybe you're not supposed to. Maybe this is how the universe teaches balance, not through stillness, but through contrast. For every beam of new light, there must be a space of darkness where meaning can rest as evening approaches. The smaller sun dips toward the horizon, but even sunset feels different now. The gold fades faster, replaced by pale amber that cools into white long before night falls. The air seems thinner, quieter. When stars appear, they twinkle harder, fighting for attention against the sun's lingering glow. And for a moment, you wonder if this is what transcendence feels like, when the familiar becomes unrecognizable, yet still somehow beautiful. You breathe in, and the warmth feels lighter, almost like memory instead of touch. The day may have changed, the light may have evolved, but the story remains the same. The world keeps turning, and you, small as you are, keep finding ways to see wonder, even when everything shifts. Tomorrow, the sun will rise again, smaller, whiter, brighter, and you'll look up once more, not with fear, but with curiosity. Because sometimes the light that burns also illuminates the path forward. Because sometimes the light that burns also illuminates the path forward. And as days continue to stretch beneath this sharper sun, something even stranger begins to unfold. Time itself seems to change its rhythm. The familiar pulse of morning to night, the easy slide of hours, feels ever so slightly out of step. Clocks still tick, seconds still pass, yet somehow the world seems to breathe slower, deeper, as if the heartbeat of the earth has found a new cadence. You start to notice it in subtle ways. Shadows linger just a moment too long before fading, and dawn feels shorter, compressed into a single inhalation of light. Noon, once steady and golden, now arrives too soon and lingers. The hours between midday and dusk feel stretched thin, like fabric pulled taut over invisible space. Even your own thoughts move differently, as if the brightness above has thinned the veil between seconds, making each moment a little more fragile, a little more eternal. Perhaps it's not the sun itself that has changed time, but the way it filters through the human mind. Light has always been our clockkeeper. It dictates when we wake, when we rest, when our bodies release the quiet tides of hormones that make us dream. But under this new brilliance, the boundaries blur. Mornings arrive before you're ready, and evenings hesitate to begin. You lose track of the hour, not because you're busy, but because the world refuses to dim enough to remind you that time is moving forward. There's something unsettling about it, and yet strangely comforting. To feel the edges of time soften, to drift through moments that feel both endless and fleeting. Have you ever watched sunlight dance on water and felt, for an instant, that the ripples might go on forever? That's what life feels like now. The clock hands turn, but your heart hesitates to follow. Somewhere inside, an ancient rhythm begins to stir, one that measures not minutes, but meaning. You start to wonder, what if time has never really been linear at all? What if it's more like light itself, bending, refracting, folding back through itself in ways our minds can't see? Maybe every sunrise isn't a repetition, but a conversation between past and present, echoing through the bright corridors of existence. Under the smaller, brighter sun, you can almost feel it, that shimmer of eternal motion, where everything is new and old all at once. Animals seem to sense it too. Birds, confused at first, begin to shift their migrations, following the subtle change in heat and shadow. Some fly earlier, as if racing ahead of a clock they no longer trust. Others linger longer, caught between instinct and uncertainty. Even trees seem to move in slow thought, their growth rings tightening, recording the new rhythm of the Earth's pulse in their silent wooden diaries. The planet is learning to breathe differently, and you, too, are part of that adjustment. There's a peculiar paradox in all of this. The sun burns brighter, faster, more intensely, yet life on Earth feels slower, softer, almost suspended. It's as though the universe has turned down the tempo of perception to balance the rise in energy. Like a dancer who moves in graceful, slow motion beneath a strobe of lightning, each movement deliberate, beautiful. Deliberate, as if afraid to break the fragile choreography of existence. And in that slowness, something awakens inside you. You begin to see details you once overlooked, the way dust motes swirl in beams of light, each one tracing a tiny orbit of its own. The faint flicker of your own pulse when you hold your wrist against the glow. The way shadows breathe, contracting and expanding with the turning earth. You realize that time is not just something that passes, it's something that lives within you, that moves through your body as surely as blood or breath. The ancients used to say that time and light were siblings born from the same first spark. Perhaps they were right. Under this altered sky, their connection feels undeniable. Every second glows with visible weight. Every minute seems carved from light itself. You no longer count hours. You feel them like waves of brightness washing gently through your awareness. And in that feeling, the anxiety of urgency begins to dissolve. You stop chasing time and instead begin to listen to it. There's a lesson in this strange dance. In a world where the sun burns smaller yet brighter, it's as if the universe is whispering. Not all intensity is meant to rush you forward. Sometimes, even the most powerful forces can invite stillness. Maybe this is what enlightenment really means, not escape, but alignment. The realization that eternity isn't something far away, but woven into every illuminated second you've ever lived. At night, when you finally rest, the afterglow of the sun lingers in your dreams. You see flashes of moments, laughter from long ago, faces that once felt distant, all shimmering in the same light. Time folds in on itself, a spiral instead of a line. You wake before dawn, and for a moment, you can't tell if you've slept for minutes or millennia. The world feels both ancient and newly born, and somehow that feels right. The earth hums softly, almost imperceptibly, as if the crust itself is resonating with the sun's renewed frequency. Oceans follow a slightly different rhythm, their tides faintly out of sync with the moon. Even gravity seems to hum with a brighter tone, a delicate shift you can't measure but can feel like the subtlest change in a familiar melody. It's as though everything is learning to waltz again, in a slightly altered tempo. And you, the gentle traveler through this cosmic light, find a calm acceptance in the strangeness. You stop trying to make sense of it and start to feel your place within it. You are not separate from this dance. You are part of it, your heartbeats marking the same rhythm that moves planets and stars. You belong to the same choreography that spins galaxies into spirals. You are time moving through itself. Sometimes, when you stand very still, the line between seconds disappears entirely. The breeze pauses. The world feels translucent. You realize that you are witnessing not just the passage of time, but its essence, pure motion without measurement. It is both humbling and liberating to know that even if everything changes, the rhythm continues. It always has, and as the sun rises once more, smaller but impossibly bright, the light catches your eyes, and for a brief moment you see something extraordinary. Every moment of your life, stacked like transparent sheets of glass, glowing together in one infinite present. You understand, if only for a breath, that eternity isn't endless, it's now. The heartbeat of the cosmos and your own are the same pulse. The morning feels timeless, as though the earth itself has slipped gently out of its orbit into something softer, not chaos, but grace. You exhale, letting go of everything you once thought you needed to measure, because in the end, time is not what slips away from us. It's what carries us quietly, endlessly, into light, because in the end, time is not what slips away from us. It's what carries us quietly, endlessly, into light. And under that light, life begins to change its breath. The world is learning how to live beneath a brilliance that never truly rests. It is not the kind of change you notice all at once, but rather the slow awakening of adaptation, the earth inhaling differently, adjusting to its own reflection. At first, it feels as if the whole planet is holding its breath. The air seems too clean, too thin, like the pause between heartbeats. But then, slowly, you begin to see how life bends instead of breaks. Grass grows shorter, denser, like it's trying to hide within itself. The forests shift their color, palette greens deepening into silvery tones, leaves glinting as though dusted with glass. Some species of trees evolve leaves with mirror-like surfaces, scattering sunlight away like millions of tiny shields. Under this brighter sun, reflection becomes survival. Along the rivers, you find plants that once stood proud, now folding inward during midday as though bowing in reverence to the overwhelming light. Others flourish in unexpected ways, flowering faster, blooming wider, drinking from the sky's endless energy. The balance is delicate. For every species that struggles, another thrives, like a silent trade made between generations. Life does not surrender. It rearranges its rhythm. Animals, too, begin their quiet revolution. Many retreat underground during the longest hours, building homes beneath the cool breath of soil. Burrows stretch deeper, safer, echoing the comfort of twilight they once took for granted. Amphibians linger longer in shaded pools, their skin shimmering faintly as if coated in liquid silver to reflect the harshness above. Birds alter their migration paths, flying at dawn and dusk, choosing flight paths where the light bends gentler across the horizon. Even predators learn patience hunting under the white nights, when the lingering glow softens but never fades entirely. And then there are humans, always the adapters, always the dreamers. At first, people fight the light, shutting blinds tighter, sleeping beneath layers of fabric to simulate the old darkness. But darkness, once so abundant, becomes precious. Entire industries rise around creating night artificial shades, filtered windows, soundproof rooms where the body can remember how to rest. The world begins to glow in constant daylight. Yet our souls crave the hush of shadows. Your body starts to shift without your permission. Melatonin releases later, slower. Sleep no longer follows the clock, but the subtle pulse of the dimmest hours. You find yourself napping in the false twilight between noon and evening, when the sun's intensity dips just enough for the world to exhale. Dreams come differently, now brighter, shorter, strange. It's as though the subconscious must fight for darkness, weaving shadows from memory just to find rest. Would our dreams survive under constant day? It's a haunting question, because dreams are born in the quiet corners of the mind, in the places light doesn't reach. They thrive in uncertainty, in mystery, in the calm between what is known and what is felt. When light floods every corner, even our imaginations feel exposed. And yet, perhaps, dreams evolve, too transforming from flickers in darkness to visions painted in light. Maybe we begin to dream with our eyes open, crafting wonder out of awareness instead of escape. Scientists study the new rhythms with fascination and fatigue. They call it circadian recalibration. But the truth is more intimate. Humanity is rediscovering how to breathe. You start waking up not to alarms, but to instincts, your body finding its own tide between glare and glow. You learn to appreciate half-light, the soft hue just before dusk that feels like a whisper between worlds. It becomes sacred time, a new kind of evening that invites you to pause, reflect, and simply be. The nights are no longer truly dark. The smaller, brighter sun leaves behind a ghost of its glow, a pale luminescence that lingers long after sunset. The stars fade earlier, shy against the whitened sky. But sometimes, during rare moments when clouds drift across the heavens, filtering the light into soft veils, you catch a glimpse of the old world, the deep blues, the velvet shadows, the way starlight used to hum quietly in the silence. It feels like remembering a song you once loved but forgot the words to. People begin to build their lives around these moments of gentle dimness. Festivals of dusk emerge, celebrations held when the sun dips just low enough for color to return. Artists paint with light instead of pigment, bending reflections through crystal and water to mimic the lost sunsets. Music shifts tone, too slower, softer, as if every note is an attempt to translate the feeling of twilight. Even love changes pace. Under constant brilliance, intimacy moves indoors, into cocooned spaces where shadows still dare to exist. The world learns that tenderness needs shade, and yet there is something profoundly beautiful about this adaptation. The brightness that once felt unbearable becomes familiar, almost comforting. You learn to walk through it without flinching, to see the subtleties in what once seemed blinding. The white light reveals the smallest gestures, the flicker of an eyelash, the glimmer of breath in the air. You start noticing what was always there, but hidden in the old softness of gold. Maybe this is the paradox of light. The closer it gets to purity, the more it teaches us humility. Even your breathing changes. It becomes slower, deeper, as if your lungs are adjusting to the density of brightness itself. You inhale not just air, but radiance, and with every exhale, you release your resistance to it. The world feels lighter when you stop fighting its glow. You realize that to survive here isn't just about protection, it's about surrender. To breathe under brightness is to accept that some beauty cannot be softened, only lived through at night. When sleep finally comes, it's different. You drift off not into darkness, but into a pale kind of dreaming silver stillness that feels neither day nor night. It's calm, but not quiet, serene, but alive. Somewhere in that half-sleep, you sense the earth exhaling with you. Life has found its rhythm, again not the old one, but a new harmony born from endurance. And as you rest, glowing in that eternal twilight, one truth glimmers softly in your chest. Adaptation isn't about becoming less, it's about becoming more capable of love, even in unfamiliar light. Because even under a relentless sun, life always finds a way to breathe. Listen closely, and you will hear if the sun has always been music, and now its note has moved higher. Think of light as vibration, each color a tone, each wave a plucked string. The smaller, brighter sun sings in a purer register, a clear note that threads the air and brushes the skin like a distant bell. Space holds no audible sound, yet radiation carries rhythm, and in that rhythm our senses find meaning. Imagine an orchestra tightening its tempo and shifting its key. The sun's core, compressed and hotter, becomes a higher frequency instrument. Electromagnetic waves shift. Shorter wavelengths strengthen, while longer reds recede. This is not metaphor alone. Black body radiation and the laws that govern stellar spectra tell the same story. A star that burns hotter radiates bluer light. Its spectrum moves upward as if the cosmos had transposed the entire score. You feel this change in color. Plants, which once drank slower red and golden notes, learn a different harmony. Leaves alter their pigments, reflecting light like tiny shields, or turning silver in the brightest hours. Water answers with a sharper voice. Seas that once hummed in deep blue now flash and silver under this concentrated radiation. Human eyes, adapted to warm golds and fading ambers, blink against a world rendered with surgical clarity. There is authority in this explanation because it rests on laws that astronomers use to read stars. Yet explaining does not remove wonder. The electromagnetic spectrum, radio waves to gamma rays, becomes an orchestra of behaviors. And our sun has simply nudged its instrument into a new part. Planck's curve shifts, the peak emission climbs, and what we perceive as color and temperature follows. chemistry responds. Photosynthesis, pigmentation, weather patterns, all bend to the new rhythm. What sound might the world make if light became music? Perhaps cities would wake to a chime of details, the microflash of glass, the silver edge of a leaf, the tiny spark of dust in air. Silence would have texture, and contrast would deepen, so that small things stand out like soloists against a quiet chorus. There is beauty in that clarity, the kind that invites you to notice, to lean in, but there is also challenge. When everything is revealed, what remains private? Curiosity opens at the thought of other stars' songs. A red dwarf would be a low cello, a blue giant, a trumpet. Our sun, stepping higher, gives us a rare chance to hear its timbre more plainly, to understand how our planet fits into the cosmic symphony. Light becomes conversation, not just illumination, channel through which the universe offers its subtle information to those who will listen. Poetic analogies help here because they soften complexity. Speak of resonance, and you speak of belonging. Speak of harmony, and you speak of balance. The sun's brighter note is not an assault, but a change in pitch, an invitation to retune. At first, your vision may ache. Your skin may seek the old gold, but slowly, adaptation arrives with grace. Retinas adjust, pigments shift, routines find new cadences. You begin to hum along. There is a lesson tucked in the music. Attention. Both light and song refuse to be mere background. This brighter register demands presence. If you lean into it, you notice textures that used to hide in shadow, the thin flute of morning, the hollow drum of a midday valley, the harp-like shimmer over a quiet sea. The sun's new frequency teaches discernment, coaxing senses to awaken to finer things. And in that waking, physics and poetry meet. The equations of blackbody radiation and stellar spectra do not strip away magic. They reveal how the universe composes its beauty. Understanding the mechanics of light deepens the wonder, showing that the same laws that move planets also shape the tone of a morning. The world becomes both more knowable and more sacred. So in the hush after dawn, when the white light settles on your shoulders, listen. Let the brightness be a teacher. Let it pull you into a quieter attention, where each moment is a note, each color a chord. The sun's song has changed its key, and with patient listening, you will find your own voice harmonizing with the music of light. And yet, even as the new sun sings its sharper tune, the world beneath it learns to breathe with that music. You begin to notice how every surface has become an instrument. Sand hums with warmth, rivers shimmer with overtones, and even the quiet between heartbeats feels tuned to some invisible resonance. The air itself seems to vibrate, carrying not sound, but sensation, a kind of luminous awareness that reminds you that existence is not silence, but measured rhythm. You are not merely living under light anymore. You are living inside it. Scientists call it radiation flux, the total energy passing through every inch of your skin and leaf and sea. But to you, it feels like a motion, steady, insistent, transforming. When the sun was larger and softer, the world's melody was slow, like a lullaby. Now it's precise, crystalline, urgent, the tempo of clarity itself. You catch yourself thinking differently, moving differently, as though your own thoughts are being tuned to match the frequency of this new brilliance. It's strange how a change in light can alter the the shape of human mood. Colors that once whispered now command. Shadows that once comforted now seem too dark. You are more awake than you've ever been, but sometimes you long for the drowsy hum of the past. The smaller, brighter sun doesn't allow much dreaming. Nights arrive sharper, shorter. The afterglow lingers too long, and your brain, bathed in the relentless echo of day, forgets how to rest. Melatonin, the quiet chemical of sleep, hesitates. Minds flicker longer before surrendering to dreams. Some people find peace in this constant light, claiming it sharpens their purpose. Others crumble under its intensity, craving softness, craving imperfection. It's the paradox of brilliance. Illumination brings both revelation and fatigue, and yet, listen closer, even this new world has its balance. As the sun's frequency rises, so too does the Earth's response. The planet hums lower, grounding the light's sharpness with its deep, magnetic tone. It's as if the Earth itself understands music, one note ascending, one descending, keeping the harmony whole. Oceans absorb the excess, their waves reflecting not chaos but rhythm. Deep under the sea, where brightness cannot reach, life continues to pulse in calm counterpoint. Every system adjusts, finding its key. The world never truly loses balance. It only changes the song in the quiet hours. When the light softens but never fades completely, you might notice a strange serenity. The world feels alive in a different way, not sleepy, not chaotic, but aware. It's as if every atom listens now. The hum of photosynthesis, the whisper of wind over leaves, even the slow, rhythmic contraction of your own lungs, all of it feels synchronized to this new solar symphony. You start to wonder, was the sun always singing, and we simply never learned to hear it? Awe is a powerful teacher. It disarms the intellect and invites surrender. You stand under the bright sky and feel both small and infinite, fragile yet woven into something vast. Every shimmer of light on water feels like a heartbeat of creation, and every breath feels like participation in a cosmic rhythm too complex to name. You don't need to understand the equations of black-body radiation or spectral shift to feel their poetry, because what science describes, the soul feels. The brighter sun becomes more than a star. It becomes metaphor. It teaches that clarity and comfort rarely coexist, that to grow, sometimes we must step into a light that feels too sharp, too revealing. It strips away illusions the way morning strips away dreams, and though it may sting at first, it also heals. The sun's new music is not gentle, but it is honest, and honesty has its own beauty. So you breathe in, letting that brightness fill your lungs. You breathe out, sending your small note back into the vastness. Together, you and the cosmos compose a fragile duet, human heart and stellar flame, to rhythms learning to coexist. The melody may have changed, but the harmony remains eternal. And somewhere in that brilliance, you realize you were never merely listening to the sun's song. You were part of it all along. You drift through space in silence. And the first thing you notice is how still everything feels, as though the solar system itself is holding its breath beneath the new sun. The light is sharper now, colder and whiter, like the edge of a blade drawn across a black velvet sky. Planets that once shimmered in gentle gold now gleam with the brilliance of mirrors. You float forward, unhurried, and the world of Mercury rises first into view. It looks less like a planet and more like a pearl, too close to a flame, beautiful but trembling on the edge of destruction. Its surface, once a patchwork of shadow and stone, now glows almost translucent. The sunlight doesn't just strike it, it lingers, carving faint rivers of molten glass where rock cannot resist the heat. You can almost imagine the sound it would make if sound could travel here, a slow, sighing hum, like a candle burning itself out in silence. Venus follows, veiled and radiant, though its veil has changed. Where once thick golden clouds swirled with acid and mystery, now they blaze like molten mirrors. The atmosphere reflects so fiercely that space itself shimmers around it, as if reality bends in its glare. Venus, the eternal enigma, has become a lantern, impossibly bright, impossibly distant. The sunlight catches its peaks, refracting through its haze until the whole planet seems alive with colorless fire. You watch and wonder if beauty can ever exist without danger, if brilliance can ever exist without cost. In this new cosmic order, Venus has become both a warning wrapped in light. Then you turn your gaze outward, toward the world that once mirrored our own hopes, Mars. Under the smaller, brighter sun, its rusty plains fade to pale gold. The thin air glints faintly, scattering sunlight like powdered silver. Frost stretches farther than before, coating craters in shining ice that looks almost delicate, like crystal breath frozen mid-air. It's colder here now, paradoxically, even though the sun burns hotter. The smaller star's intensity doesn't reach far enough to warm these lands the way it once did. Mars glistens beautifully, but it sleeps. You imagine what it would feel like to stand there under a sky of burning white and see your own shadow carved sharply against frozen ground. Would it feel like being on the edge of time itself, watching the universe decide which worlds will continue to breathe and which will simply remain? The asteroid belt glimmers next, each fragment flashing like a scattered constellation, every rock polished by light to pure to fade. They look like forgotten thoughts drifting between worlds, tiny remnants of possibility, glowing quietly, content to exist without purpose. Beyond them, Jupiter waits. The giant's storms, once swirling in deep oranges and reds, now appear faint, drained of warmth. Its cloud tops shine like marble streaked with ivory, the great red spot now pale and ghostly, still moving, but slower, as though even storms have grown contemplative under this light. The moons surrounding it, Europa, Ganymede, Callisto, glint like pearls suspended in motion, each one reflecting the sun's new intensity with a kind of fragile defiance. You imagine what their frozen oceans must look like now, vast plains of mirror ice, capturing light from a star that has grown too brilliant to look at directly. And then Saturn appears, its rings dazzling beyond words. Once golden, now they blaze silver-white, each particle catching and flinging the sunlight outward in endless waves. The planet itself has become a quiet miracle, serene, luminous, like a dream sculpted from frost. You drift along its rings, watching the light ripple through them in silent symphony. Every grain of ice, every sliver of dust joins the performance, turning the sky into an infinite prism. The sight is so delicate, so impossibly balanced, that it makes you hesitate to breathe, afraid even the thought of movement might disturb it. Farther still, Uranus and Neptune hang like distant thoughts, cool, ethereal, their blues and greens now faded to pale mist. The smaller, brighter sun reaches them only faintly, but enough to make their atmospheres glow softly, like memory itself. They seem to drift not through space, but through time, relics of a gentler cosmos that once was. Neptune's winds still whisper, but slower now, carrying echoes of an older rhythm. The sun, though smaller, has reached them with new precision, carving faint halos that shimmer like promises too far away to touch. Out here, on the edge of light, darkness still wins, but it feels different. The boundary between illumination and shadow has shifted, softened, as though the universe itself is trying to redefine contrast. The Kuiper belt glows faintly under the sun's stretched radiance, icy bodies gleaming like distant echoes of creation. Even Pluto, once a secret of the outer dark, wears a sheen of white now. It's cold beyond imagining, yet somehow alive, holding its place in the grand silence, refusing to fade. You look back, and the solar system unfurls behind you like a string of lanterns, each world a note in a vast cosmic melody. Some burn too brightly, some dim, some shimmer faintly in between. Together, they compose a kind of celestial equilibrium, fragile but beautiful. You realize then that every world has its own response to change. None are untouched, but none are truly lost either. Like people, planets adapt, not always easily, not always gracefully, but persistently. And as you drift farther out, where the sun becomes no larger than a bead of light, you begin to understand something quiet yet profound. The universe doesn't mourn its transformations, it sings them. Every shift in light, every altered orbit, every shimmering reflection is part of that eternal song. You think of Earth, still spinning, still dreaming beneath its white skies, and you feel a strange peace, because even if everything glows differently now, even if every world has changed, the music remains. The fate of the planets is not to perish under new light, but to learn how to shine within it. And maybe, in some way, that's our fate too. The world didn't end under the smaller, brighter sun. It transformed. Humanity, ever restless, ever resourceful, found ways to bend brilliance without breaking beneath it. At first, the change was chaos, streets too blinding to walk at noon, glass towers shimmering so fiercely that they burned the air, and nights that never felt dark enough for dreams to settle. But slowly, as we always do, we learned to listen, not to the noise of panic, but to the quiet rhythm of adaptation. Cities began to evolve, their skylines reshaped into subtle shades of silver and smoke. The glass that once reached greedily for sunlight now learned to temper it. Smart surfaces, alive with nanofilms, adjusted their tint like eyelids, squinting in self-defense. Rooftops grew feathers of reflective solar fabric, catching energy and turning it into breath for the city below. Daylight became an instrument, not a weapon, a thing we could tune. You could stand in the middle of a once scorched street and watch the buildings breathe, their walls shifting hue as clouds passed overhead, filtering the harshness into something the eye could love again. We dimmed the day, but we did it gently. It wasn't rebellion, it was grace. Humanity didn't hide from the sun. We danced with it, learning how to step back when it came too close, how to let it lead when it grew softer. Our technology became an act of empathy for ourselves, for the light, for the fragile balance between survival and wonder. Solar sails stretched across oceans, collecting energy like butterflies gathering nectar. Entire coastlines glittered with floating farms of light, converting intensity into harmony. For the first time, humanity lived not under the sun, but with it, partners in a strange, luminous conversation. Inside homes, people began to rediscover shadows. Once feared as symbols of darkness, they became treasures again, soft sanctuaries for the senses. Curtains, walls, and clothing were woven with adaptive fibers that shifted tone as the day advanced, letting the body rest even when the sky refused to dim. People began timing their sleep to rhythms older than clocks, guided not by the sun's dominance, but by its gentler breaths between peaks of light. Twilight became a new kind of luxury, a handmade dusk. You could almost feel society exhale when the first soft shades rolled through the glass-filtered streets, bringing relief like water to thirst. But there was more than comfort at stake. There was identity. What does it mean to be human in a world where the sun burns brighter than memory itself? We had to relearn the art of stillness. The endless energy pouring from the sky tempted us to move faster, build faster, think faster, as though we could match its rhythm. Yet we discovered that true progress wasn't about acceleration, but balance. We built machines that could run endlessly on light, yet we reminded ourselves to pause. Humanity, at its core, is not made to glow constantly. We need contrast to define who we are. So people began to invent new colors, ones that didn't exist before, pigments that could soothe the eye in hyperlight. Artists found beauty in restraint, painting with muted luminescence that seemed to breathe rather than shine. Clothing reflected just enough light to cool the skin, but not enough to blind the heart. It was as if creativity itself had learned to speak in whispers. The world grew calmer, yet more alive, a paradox we learned to cherish. And amid all this brightness, something subtle happened to the human spirit. We stopped fearing exposure. The sun's relentless clarity left no room for hiding from flaws, from truths, from each other. Under the whiter sky, transparency became a virtue. We began to value honesty the way we once valued shade. In a world so illuminated, deceit could not survive long. Everything was revealed, and strangely, that made us gentler. When everyone can see the cracks, perfection loses its tyranny. The new light did not make us flawless, it made us real. There were still challenges, of course. Children grew up with lenses built into their windows, filters that taught their eyes to rest. Farmers cultivated crops with mirrored leaves, engineered to sip sunlight instead of drowning in it. Water, reflecting endlessly, demanded new ways of stewardship as oceans shimmered like living mirrors. But even as nature adjusted and humanity recalibrated, a quiet confidence began to grow, a collective knowing that adaptation was not defeat. It was evolution in its purest form, patient, mindful, alive, and at night. Yes, there were still nights. The stars seemed sharper, as if in gratitude. The smaller sun left space for them to breathe, to speak. Humanity would stand on terraces, faces tilted upward, and watch the sky hum with impossible clarity. Some said you could hear it, not with ears, but with the soul. a faint harmony between the lingering light of the sun and the ancient songs of distant worlds. We learned, in the end, that the struggle with brightness wasn't about survival. It was about understanding energy, not just the kind that powers cities, but the kind that powers hearts. The sun had changed, but so had we. We learned to see light not as dominance, but as dialogue, not as exposure, but as invitation. And as you stand there, beneath the still brilliant sky, you feel it too, that delicate equilibrium between awe and peace. The world is not softer, but you are. The brightness no longer feels like a burden. It feels like a mirror, showing you what humanity becomes when it learns to glow without burning. Imagine waking up and realizing the night never came, the horizon never dimmed, the stars never whispered their faint lullabies, and the moon, once a quiet companion, simply faded from memory. The sun, smaller but fiercer, lingers endlessly above you. Days no longer pass, they stretch. Time itself begins to melt under a sky that never blinks. Have you ever had a moment that felt so long it seemed eternal? Imagine living inside that moment forever. At first, humanity would marvel at the gift. No more waiting for daylight to work, no more shadows to fear. Crops thrive beneath the golden surge, solar cities shimmer endlessly, and light becomes the new symbol of progress. But slowly, the mind begins to ache. Without darkness, the world loses its punctuation, the commas and pauses that gave life its rhythm. The body craves rest, yet the sun refuses to dim. Our circadian rhythm, the quiet conductor of our inner clock, starts to falter. Days blend into one another, and people begin to ask, when does one day end and another begin? You'd think light would bring clarity, but constant brightness blurs more than it reveals. In a world without night, shadows become precious thin, fragile lines of contrast that define what's real. People start seeking them out, standing under the rare coolness of shade, as though it were holy. Artists paint with darkness instead of color, craving what's missing. Children who never saw a star hear myths of a velvet sky and think of it as an ancient fairy tale. The night becomes nostalgia. In such a world, time slows. Not because the hours change, but because perception does. The mind, deprived of contrast, loses its sense of pace. Every hour feels stretched, syrupy, eternal. Think of the longest afternoon of your life, the one that refused to end. Now multiply it by forever. That's what life feels like under a smaller, brighter sun. People don't notice time passing anymore. Birthdays fade into daylight. Midnight ceases to exist. Sleep becomes an act of rebellion, not necessity. The world hums in one endless tone, and yet, in that strange monotony, beauty emerges. Humanity learns to create rhythm without darkness. Instead of sunsets, people invent artificial twilight curtains that dim cities into dreamlike hues of gold and violet. Artificial moons drift across domed skies, casting gentle glows to trick the senses. Psychologists notice something profound. When people can no longer rely on night to measure rest, they start measuring time emotionally. Moments become elastic. A tender conversation might feel eternal. A workday might vanish in an instant. Time stops being measured by clocks and starts being measured by meaning. But not everyone adapts. Some people grow restless. Without the slow drift of nightfall, anxiety rises. There's no symbolic end to the day, no closure, no descent into silence. People report feeling stuck in brightness, a kind of cosmic insomnia. Even memories begin to bleach under the endless light. Ask someone what happened yesterday, and they might hesitate, unsure if that word still applies. Time, once a river, becomes an ocean vast, shimmering, directionless. Still, humanity endures. We always do. Scientists study the effects of this relentless radiance, discovering that our brains, though confused, can evolve. New sleep patterns emerge. People learn to dream in shorter bursts, in waking states. The concept of night becomes internal, a place in the mind rather than the sky. Meditation replaces moonlight. Inner darkness replaces outer. We become the keepers of our own rhythm. And perhaps, in a strange way, this new sun teaches us something ancient. It reminds us that light, though beautiful, means nothing without shadow. Just as joy without sadness becomes hollow, brightness without contrast loses its magic. Philosophers begin to speak of the bright, slow hours as both a blessing and a test, a reminder that too much of any one thing, even beauty, can become blindness. The sun may glow eternally, but our souls still need the hush of twilight to understand it. Imagine walking through this endless day, your footsteps soft on pale ground, your thoughts echoing in the stillness. The air hums gently, the light pressing like warm silk on your skin. There are no stars above, no guides to navigate by, only memory and instinct. Somewhere deep inside, you long for darkness, not because it hides things, but because it reveals them in ways light cannot. In that longing, you rediscover what it means to feel time. Every heartbeat becomes an hour, every breath a sunset, and so humanity learns to live differently. We begin to mark time not by when the sun rises or sets, but by the depth of our experience. A kiss, a word, a moment of silence. Music slows, art softens, people speak more quietly. We learn to create calm in a world that never stops shining. There's something poetic in that, isn't there? The idea that when the universe takes away our night, we find new ways to dream. Eventually, generations grow up who have never known darkness. They look at archived footage of stars and moons like museum relics. And yet, something inside them stirs a memory that doesn't belong to them. Maybe it's written in our DNA, that ancient rhythm of night and day. Perhaps, deep down, we'll always remember that the universe once sang in contrast, light against dark, sound against silence, time against stillness. Without that contrast, we lose not just night, we lose narrative. The story of existence becomes one long, unbroken sentence. And stories, as we know, need pauses to mean something. So maybe the lesson isn't just cosmic. Maybe it's personal. When was the last time you allowed yourself to rest, not because you earned it, but because you needed it? When was the last time you let silence be enough? We live in a world that glorifies constant light, always working, always scrolling, always shining. But even under a smaller, brighter sun, we are still human. We still crave the dark corners where reflection lives, where growth happens quietly, where the mind exhales. The bright, slow hours stretch on. The sun, unwavering, hums its high, eternal note across the sky. But down here on this small, dreaming world, people begin to whisper again. They close their eyes. They create shadows inside and out. And in those shadows, they rediscover time, not the time of clocks or calendars, but the time of feeling, of becoming, the time that moves not in seconds, but in stillness. And maybe that's how we survive under endless light, not by escaping it, but by learning to see with our eyes closed, to measure time by what it means to us, not by what the sun demands, to remember that even when the universe forgets to dim, we can still choose to rest and to dream. There's a strange kind of beauty in irony, isn't there? The sun, once our guide to seeing the cosmos, now blinds us from it. The sky, once a vast window into infinity, becomes a blank sheet of light, too bright, too pure, too empty. Humanity, for all its brilliance, has found itself in a paradox. We have entered the brightest age of our existence, and yet we see less than ever before. Imagine stepping outside one evening, though evening no longer means what it once didn't. Tilting your head upward, the sky hums with light, flawless and featureless, as if someone erased the stars with a gentle hand. No constellations to anchor your thoughts, no moon to pull your gaze, just a soft, glowing canvas that never fades. The air feels heavy with radiance. You close your eyes, not to rest, but to remember what darkness used to look like. It's a quiet ache that spreads across humanity, a longing not for warmth, but for wonder. For thousands of years, we measured our stories against the stars. They were our myths, our maps, our mirrors. When the world grew cold, we looked up. When it grew dark, we looked up, but now we can't. The sun's new intensity, born from its smaller, denser heart, scatters light through every layer of the sky. The atmosphere becomes a prism, bending brilliance into blindness. Astronomy, once a communion with the heavens, becomes an act of retreat, so scientists go underground, deep beneath the surface, in mountain caverns and polar caves. Humanity builds new eyes for the cosmos telescopes that hide from light. The greatest observatories of this new era are not built on mountaintops, but buried in shadow. They listen to the universe in wavelengths our eyes can no longer bear: radio, infrared, gravitational whispers. We've learned to hear the stars we can't see. In this blinding world, knowledge moves from sight to sense. There's something haunting about that, how light, the very thing that made us explorers, has become our veil. The sun, in shining harder, has taught us humility. It reminds us that clarity doesn't always come from brightness. Sometimes, to truly see, we must look away. Think of how your eyes adjust after a camera flash, momentary blindness before vision returns. Humanity is caught in that flash now, stumbling between brilliance and blindness, learning to feel its way forward. And yet, in that struggle, there's evolution. Astronomers adapt. They build colossal shadow shields, orbiting far from Earth, blocking the sun's glare like celestial eyelids. Some travel to the far side of the moon now, a permanent refuge of darkness where robotic observatories whisper with distant galaxies. For the first time, we study the universe not as something we look at, but something we listen to. The cosmos sings softly in frequencies of gravity and magnetism. And in those notes, we rediscover awe. There's a strange parallel between this and our own minds. We've always equated light with knowledge, darkness with ignorance. But maybe that was never the full truth. Maybe darkness was simply the quiet space where understanding took root. When everything is visible, nothing stands out. When everything shines, nothing glows. In the age of eternal daylight, we learn to appreciate the art of shadow, the wisdom in what's hidden. Scientists begin to say it aloud. We became blind in the brightest age. And somehow, that feels like a confession and a prayer. Still, there's resilience. People start to gather in shadow gardens, small domed spaces where filters mimic twilight. There, children learn about the constellations they've never seen: Orion, Cassiopeia, the Milky Way. Holographic stars glimmer against matte ceilings, flickering softly like memories trying to return. Parents whisper bedtime stories about the night, describing it like a dream one can almost remember, a vast, cool silence filled with glittering thoughts. And though the children have never known it, they listen as if they do. Astronomy, once a field of sight, becomes a philosophy of patience. We learn that discovery isn't just about reaching farther, but perceiving deeper. The smaller, brighter sun may blind our eyes, but it sharpens our minds. We develop instruments that see through brilliance, that measure not the stars we can no longer view, but the distortions their gravity leaves behind. In that absence, we find presence. The universe continues to reveal itself, just in quieter, subtler ways. And perhaps this is the deeper message hidden in the glare. Light, no matter how divine, has limits. Every illumination casts a shadow. Every truth hides another behind it. We used to believe that the brighter we shone, the more we'd understand. But the cosmos teaches balance. Even brilliance must bow to mystery. The brightest world can still be blind, and blindness can still be full of beauty. Imagine standing on a mountaintop now, shielded by filters, looking through one of these new adaptive telescopes. You can't see the stars, not directly, but the data sings through your instruments, painting invisible harmonies in your mind. You realize then that the stars never truly left. They were only hidden, waiting for us to evolve new ways of seeing. It's as if the universe whispered, "When you lose your eyes, find your ears. When you lose your night, find your stillness." In a world where everything glows, the greatest act of wonder is to seek the dark, not as escape, but as balance. We remember that knowledge isn't just about illumination, it's about depth, about texture, about learning to perceive what hides between the rays. Maybe that's what the new astronomy truly is, not the study of light, but the study of limits. The realization that even in the brightest age, curiosity still belongs to the shadows. And maybe that's where we find ourselves again, in the quiet underbelly of brilliance, peering out through the last remaining cracks of darkness, still reaching, still wondering. Because no matter how bright the sun burns, humanity will always look beyond it, not with eyes, but with imagination. The stars may have vanished from sight, but they still live within us, mapped into memory, waiting for the next moment we remember how to see. There are nights when you lie awake and think about causality, that delicate thread between what we do and what the stars become. Tonight, under the smaller, brighter sun, that thread feels taut and curious. What if this change was a slow, natural evolution, the sun turning a new page in its life story? Stars live and die in ways that are at once majestic and ordinary. They swell, they cool, they heat, they contract, Each stage, a chapter written in pressure and light. Our star, once a steady companion, might simply be shifting its balance in some slow, patient cycle we barely perceive. Yet there are other possibilities that feel like whispers in a dream. Could a subtle quantum shift, a tiny rearrangement deep in the solar core, have nudged the balance and made the sun burn whiter? Physics allows for strangeness at scales we rarely imagine, a fluctuation here, a resonance there that over long spans hints at new behaviors. The equations of stellar evolution are robust, but even robust systems have margins where surprises hide. If the sun remembered a hotter youth and leaned back toward that note, the result would be a world both familiar and newly strange. There are bolder questions, too, that sit at the edge of what we dare to consider. What if human intent, not ancient physics, played a role? Imagine technologies so subtle and vast their fingerprints on a star would be nearly invisible. Experiments in fusion at cosmic scales, ambitious engineering efforts altering energy flows by degrees. It sounds like speculation, perhaps fiction, yet humanity's reach often exceeds foresight, and our inventions sometimes change environments in ways we cannot easily reverse. The idea is unsettling, that our curiosity might have nudged the very heart of our star. We can speak confidently about stages of stellar life because astrophysicists have mapped these paths with equations grounded in observation. The sun's core fuses hydrogen into helium, maintaining equilibrium through a delicate give-and-take between gravity and pressure. If that balance shifts, consequences follow. Fusion rates change, luminosity alters, and climates reform. A slight change in core density will ripple outward, reshaping light and life in predictable directions, though the precise details remain complex and full of nuance. Certainty is not the tone of tonight's sky. There is humility in admitting we cannot know the full story. Our instruments sample only traces, photons that have traveled and particles that whisper histories in their wake. The sun could be acting on cycles longer than civilizations, or answering a cause we have yet to name. The possibility that a star could remember or return to a younger state is not mere poetry. It is how stellar evolution sometimes appears when we watch slow processes with patient attention. If you allow your mind to wander, you begin to see the human scale of this question. We are small, yes, but we are also storytellers who insist on meaning. We will tell explanations that comfort and theories that challenge. We will build models, run simulations, and send probes to listen for the sun's secret heart. The process humbles us. What we measure is often less than what we feel. Still, that feeling, this collective unease and wonder, guides choices and responses across society, shaping policy, art, and quiet conversations at kitchen tables. There is a softer consideration in all this. What does it mean to live under a star that changes? Whether the cause is cosmic habit, a quantum tremor, or human meddling, the consequence is the same. We must adapt, and adaptation demands truth. We must become students of our own place in the universe, learning not merely to survive, but to understand. There is empowerment in that pursuit. Even unanswered questions instruct. They teach curiosity, caution, and renewed attention to consequence, and there remains space for wonder untouched by explanation. What if the sun's brightening is an invitational, improbable, luminous call to wakefulness? What if stars, in their vast patience, nudge the beings beneath them toward altered? If a star could remember, could it also teach? Could a change in luminosity be a cosmic lesson in fragility and resilience? A way for the universe to show us that balance is precious and delicate. In the quiet of your room, you might imagine conversing with the sun like an old friend you suspect has changed. You might ask aloud whether it chose this alterity, or whether forces beyond reason chose for it. The answer will likely be both, partly physics, partly mystery, partly our reflection in instruments. It will resist finality, and that is its grace. Mystery keeps inquiry alive. Uncertainty preserves permission to wonder. Our choices, measured, humble, and curious, become threads in that larger tapestry. Small acts that echo across centuries and quietly shape whether light heals or harms. They determine what we leave our children: knowledge, restraint, and a planet made habitable by wisdom rather than force, and stories of stewardship worth remembering before you drift into sleep. Hold this thought: whether the sun's change is written in destiny, etched by quantum chance, or nudged by ambition, it reminds us that we belong to a living cosmos. We are not merely observers. We are participants in a story that spans incomprehensible scales and fleeting moments. The sun's secret future will unfold with or without our consent. Compassionate will shape the kind of world we bequeath to those who follow. And so, dear traveler, the sky glows on. The smaller, brighter sun still burns above, steady in its brilliance, humming softly across the canvas of creation. You can feel its light even now in your skin, in your thoughts, somewhere deep behind your closed eyes. It is the same sun that once cradled ancient oceans, now reborn into something sharper, cleaner, wiser. And in its glow, we find ourselves changed too, like mirrors that have learned to reflect without being blinded. The world beneath that endless radiance has quieted into a new rhythm. Trees have found their balance, leaves folding and unfolding in patient choreography. Oceans have learned to shimmer without surrendering their depths. Humanity, fragile yet ingenious, has adjusted its heartbeat to the tempo of this fiercer light. It's strange, isn't it? How even the most powerful transformations eventually become familiar, how we learn to live within them, to breathe through brilliance and shadow alike. You might think of the sun now as something almost sentient, a teacher rather than a tyrant. Its lesson isn't about dominance or destruction, but balance. Every ray, every photon that strikes the earth carries the same quiet reminder: to burn brightly without burning out, to shine without consuming what we love. The sun, smaller yet stronger, becomes a metaphor for us all: how sometimes, in shrinking our chaos, we can deepen our clarity. In this new world, nights are shorter, but dreams stretch longer. People sleep differently now, their minds humming with faint light even in rest. Perhaps that's the truest mark of change, that even in darkness, there is always a trace of what once was day. And that's not a loss, but a kind of gift. The glow that never sleeps teaches us that rest isn't the absence of light, it's the understanding of it. It's the moment we close our eyes, trusting that illumination will still be there when we wake. Sometimes, when you stand outside at dawn, you can feel the air shimmer, stillness so clear it feels like the world is holding its breath. The sun rises small on the horizon, but it commands attention with quiet authority. you lift your face toward it, not in worship, but in kinship, because somewhere you know that this cosmic rhythm, this perfect tension between light and restraint, exists in you too. You are made of the same stardust, tempered by the same forces. The brilliance above is not separate from the warmth within. It's easy to think that endless light would erase all mystery, but it doesn't. It changes it. Shadows become subtler, quieter, like thoughts you can only see from the corner of your mind. The beauty now is not in contrast, but in coexistence. Light and dark are no longer opposites. They are partners in a cosmic dance that has no end. In that realization, there's peace. You don't need to control the glow, only to understand it. Maybe that's what the sun has been trying to tell us all along. That everything in the universe, from the smallest breath to the largest star, exists on the same spectrum of energy and calm. That radiance without compassion burns, and restraint without warmth fades. And maybe, just maybe, the secret of the cosmos isn't hidden in equations or galaxies, in the quiet balance between shining and softening, between knowing and wondering as you drift through these thoughts. Imagine Earth floating in the soft white glow of pearl, suspended in a sea of silence. Clouds shimmer, oceans breathe, and cities glow like constellations of their own. Humanity continues its story, learning to live in a brilliance that once felt unbearable, now simply beautiful. The sun has changed, but the relationship remains, the eternal dialogue between giver and receiver, between warmth and life. So take a slow breath. Feel how that light, even imagined, wraps around you not harshly, but gently, like an embrace you didn't know you missed. Let it remind you that existence, in all its brightness, is both fragile and magnificent. That we are lucky to live in a universe where even fire can teach grace. And as this thought settles, picture the horizon, once more the smaller, brighter sun descending, its light bending through thin clouds, scattering gold into silver, warmth into memory. Night is coming, softly, finally. Stars begin to appear, faint but determined, reclaiming their place against the brilliance. The glow never truly leaves. It only hums quieter for a while, allowing the world to rest. Be thankful for that. Be thankful for the gentle light that lets night still exist, for the balance between knowing and dreaming, between the day's clarity and the night's forgiveness. Because in a cosmos where even stars change, gratitude might be the truest form of stability. So sleep now, under your quiet sun. Let its warmth fade into your breath, its brightness soften into calm. Tomorrow it will rise again, smaller, whiter, endlessly patient hand. You will open your eyes once more, ready to meet it. Until then, drift easy, dear traveler. The universe keeps its glow for you, and the light that never sleeps will guide you home. And yet, the story does not truly end there, does it? Because even after the smaller, brighter sun sinks below the horizon, its influence lingers woven through the winds, reflected in the quiet shimmer of rivers, and pulsing softly in the rhythm of every living thing. It's as if the sun never really leaves us. It simply retreats into memory, into the calm corners of our consciousness, whispering, "I'm still here." And maybe that's what light truly is, not just energy, but remembrance. A promise that even in darkness, something still watches over us. If you stood outside on one of these gentler nights, you might notice how the world feels slightly awake, even as it sleeps. The air carries a faint glow, enough to turn shadows translucent and silence into something almost alive. It's peaceful, but not empty. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the soft hum of distant waves, feels like an echo of sunlight, stretched thin but unbroken. You can't quite tell where day ends and night begins anymore. The line between the two has blurred, and maybe that's a kind of harmony we were always meant to find. Imagine how humanity might respond to such a world. Streets lit not by artificial lamps, but by the pale, constant reflection of a sun that refuses to fade. Cities that never fully darken, yet never blaze too bright to rest. People begin to rediscover patience, learning that life doesn't have to swing between extremes. There's a calmness, now a collective understanding that illumination and stillness can coexist. Children grow up without the fear of the dark, and poets write about the night as something tender rather than lonely. It's strange, isn't it? How much of our emotional landscape depends on the way light moves. In a sense, this new sun hasn't just changed the world. Outside, it's redefined what comfort means. The brightness that once felt like chaos has become rhythm. We've learned to live with a gentler glow, one that nurtures instead of overwhelms. The sun has grown smaller, yes, but maybe, in its restraint, it has found wisdom. And maybe we have to. There's something deeply human in that reflection. The idea that power, when softened, becomes compassion. That strength isn't always in expansion or intensity, can live in quiet persistence, in showing up day after day, even when no one notices. Just like the sun, perhaps this transformation is a mirror of our own evolution, from the reckless burning of youth to the mindful warmth of maturity. The universe, in all its infinite complexity, seems to whisper that lesson through every beam of light. Sometimes, as twilight deepens, the sky shimmers faintly pink, as if the sun is sighing with relief, still glowing, still present, but content to rest. And in that soft exhale of color, you might feel a kinship. You've known those moments too, haven't you? When you've given all you could and finally learned that rest is not failure, it's part of shining wisely. The sun reminds us that we are not meant to burn endlessly. We are meant to glow, sustainably. So when the night finally settles in, when the stars begin to pulse through the faint veil of light, remember this: balance is not found in perfection, but in presence. The cosmos doesn't ask for control, it asks for awareness. The sun doesn't demand worship. Its glow says, I am here, and so are you. Let's exist gently together. If you could step back far enough past the atmosphere, beyond the pull of gravity, you'd see Earth suspended like a dream, haloed in a pale, eternal gleam. The sun, smaller but fiercer, watches over it with quiet pride. And in that distance, it's hard not to feel awe. Every sunrise, every reflection, every heartbeat is a thread in the tapestry of something unimaginably vast and delicate. And still, somehow, it all feels deeply personal. That's the beauty of it, the paradox of intimacy in infinity. We live our entire lives under a single star, never touching it, yet shaped entirely by its grace. We owe our breath, our warmth, our history to something that never even knew our names. And yet we are connected to it, to each other, to everything that ever burned or breathed. The smaller sun, brighter now than ever, becomes a symbol of that connection, a reminder that even when the universe changes, the essence of wonder remains untouched. So, as the night whispers around you, let that thought settle deep within. The sun may have changed, the sky may have softened, but the miracle of existence hasn't dimmed, it's only become clearer. You are part of that glow, an ember of the same cosmic fire. You carry that light in your thoughts, in your quiet moments, in the simple act of noticing the world and finding it beautiful. And so, as we drift toward the close of this story, let the glow guide you not to answers, but to acceptance, not to noise, but to stillness. Because maybe that's the true gift of this smaller, brighter sun. It doesn't just light the world, it teaches us how to see it with gentler eyes. Now breathe. The universe hums softly around you. The glow never sleeps, but tonight you can. Rest easy, traveler. Tomorrow waits, bathed in quiet gold. The light will find you again, patient as ever, reminding you that in this vast, luminous dream we are all still learning how to shine. And when morning comes, if you can even call it that, anymore, it doesn't arrive with fanfare or color. It just unfolds. The world wakes as if it was never truly asleep. The light doesn't crash through the window. It sighs in, soft and weightless, settling over everything like memory. And for a moment, you can't tell if you're dreaming or remembering the world as it used to be. The smaller, brighter sun hangs low and tender, not shouting its existence, but glowing with awareness, as if it finally understands its own purpose: to sustain, not to dominate. You feel it too, don't you? That subtle shift between being alive and feeling alive. There's something sacred about light that doesn't demand attention. It lets you breathe. It lets the mind wander without urgency. In this endless dawn, time loses its edges, and every second feels both ancient and new. Maybe this is what eternity feels like, not infinite years stretched endlessly forward, but a single perfect moment, repeating, soft and steady, forever. Humans have adapted beautifully, in quiet ways. Sleep isn't dictated by darkness anymore, it's guided by rhythm, by intuition. People rise when they feel rested, and rest when they feel whole. Cities hum at different frequencies now. Half the world awake, half dreaming, all sharing the same golden lull. Even the stars, though faint, still visit from time to time, like old friends, slipping quietly into a brightened room, just to remind you they're still there. There's poetry in this balance. We once feared the dark, then feared its absence, and now we've learned to live with both. The sun, smaller and brighter, taught us something no equation could: that illumination is not the same as understanding. Sometimes, to truly see, you need a gentler kind of light, the kind that reveals rather than blinds, the kind that listens rather than speaks. And maybe that's why, on the horizon of this new world, people have stopped worshiping the sun as a god and started seeing it as a companion, a teacher, a mirror. Every flare and flicker now feels like an echo of our own complexity, the way we too can burn too fast or dim too soon. The sun's story is our story, written across the heavens in the quiet script of photons and patience. If you stand still long enough, you might notice how the air seems thicker with gratitude. Plants lean toward the glow with a calm acceptance, their leaves catching light that once would have scorched them. Oceans shimmer, not with glare, but with grace. Even shadows have softened, becoming less of an absence and more of a whisper. It's as though the universe has learned to exhale. Life has found peace. You begin to understand. You begin to understand why ancient people looked to the sky for meaning. Because even now, with all our science and reason, there's something primal that stirs when sunlight touches your skin. It's not just warmth, it's recognition. You were forged in that same light, atoms born in the belly of stars. You and the sun share ancestry. And when it glows small, bright, and eternal, it's as if it's calling your name across time, reminding you that you are made of the same fire, softened by the same patience. So when you gaze up, let the thought settle. Maybe the sun's secret wasn't its power or its brightness, but its endurance, the quiet decision to keep burning even when everything around it changes. And perhaps that's the secret of life, to keep glowing gently, even when the universe grows strange, to hold warmth in your chest when the world asks for calm. As this story draws to a close, imagine this version of Earth bathed in that steady glow. No sharp shadows, no harsh midnights, just an eternal soft day humming with life and memory. The smaller sun watches, content. Humanity thrives, not in defiance of the cosmos, but in harmony with it. And somewhere in that balance, the universe smiles. You feel it, don't you? That peace that comes not from knowing everything, but from finally understanding enough. The light doesn't need to sleep because it has learned how to rest within itself, and so have we. The glow remains infinite and intimate, like a heartbeat at the edge of the cosmos. So, dear traveler, as you drift toward sleep beneath this imagined sky, remember this: balance is the truest kind of brilliance. The sun does not rage anymore, and neither must you. Be the smaller flame that still warms, the softer light that still guides. Let your glow be steady, not spectacular. The universe doesn't measure you by how brightly you burn, but by how gently you sustain. And in that thought, let yourself fade into the calm beyond words. The world turns, the sun hums softly, and time folds itself around your resting mind. The glow never sleeps, but you can. Good night.